In the earlier lecture, we studied the first part of 4th chapter, Standard 7th, General Science, that is the nutrition in living organism. In that lecture, we studied about the photosynthesis. As you know, that plants produce carbohydrates by the process of photosynthesis. Now, what do you mean by carbohydrates? Carbohydrate consists of fibrous food, starchy substances and sugar. So, plant produce carbohydrates by the process of photosynthesis. Carbohydrates are made from carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Proteins are made from carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen. Plants get all these gases from the atmosphere, like the carbon or the hydrogen or the oxygen. But what about nitrogen? Plants are not able to take nitrogen in the gaseous form. Then question is, how plants take in the nitrogen? Listen. As you know that air contains gaseous nitrogen, but plants cannot utilize gaseous nitrogen. Then how plants take the nitrogen? Plants need to be fixed. For that purpose, it needs to be fixed. It means gaseous nitrogen should be converted into compound form. म्हणजे वायू रूपातील नायट्रोजनचं रूपांतर संयुगामध्ये करणं गरजेचं आहे. आणि या क्रियेला म्हणतात फिक्सेशन ऑफ नायट्रोजन. Fixation of nitrogen occurs by two methods. First, biological method and second, atmospheric method. Starting from the first method, that is the biological fixation of nitrogen, म्हणजे ज्याला मराठीमध्ये म्हणतात नायट्रोजनचं जैविक स्थिरीकरण. In this process, gaseous nitrogen is actually converted into the compound form. But how? Just look at this. Now, two different types of microorganism can bring about the biological nitrogen fixation. म्हणजे gaseous nitrogenचं रूपांतर कंपाऊंड फॉर्ममध्ये करण्यासाठी दोन प्रकारचे मायक्रो ऑर्गॅनिझम महत्त्वाचे आहेत. आणि हे मायक्रो ऑर्गॅनिझम कुठे असतात? लिसन. रूट नॉड्यूल्स ऑफ लेग्युमिनियस प्लांट. लेग्युमिनियस प्लांट्स म्हणजे शेंगा येणाऱ्या वनस्पती. रूट नॉड्यूल्स, रूट म्हणजे मूळ, नॉड्यूल्स म्हणजे त्या मुळांवर छोटीशी स्वेलिंग असते, फुगवट असतो किंवा मी म्हणेल छोटीशी गाठ असते. रूट नॉड्यूल्स ऑफ लेग्युमिनियस प्लांट कंटेन द रायझोबियम मायक्रोऑर्गॅनिझम. म्हणजे शेंगा येणाऱ्या वनस्पतींच्या मुळांच्या नॉड्यूल्स म्हणजे स्वेलिंगमध्ये किंवा गाठीमध्ये रायझोबियम नावाचा मायक्रो ऑर्गॅनिझम असतो. यू नो द लेग्युमिनियस प्लांट व्हेरी वेल, लाईक ग्राउंडनट. नाव plants contain the rhizobium microorganism. Yes, and then these rhizobium microorganism absorb atmospheric nitrogen and convert into its nitrate. म्हणजे रायझोबियम मायक्रोऑर्गॅनिझम गॅसियस फॉर्ममधला नायट्रोजन ॲब्झॉर्ब करतो आणि त्याचं कन्व्हर्जन किंवा रूपांतर नायट्रेटच्या कंपाऊंडमध्ये करतो. अँड लाईक दिस प्लांट्स गेट द नायट्रोजन इन द कंपाऊंड फॉर्म. नाव which is the second microorganism which help in the biological fixation of nitrogen? Second one is the Azotobacter. These microorganisms are present in the soil. Azotobacter microorganism also convert atmospheric nitrogen into nitrate. It means from the gaseous nitrogen to the compound form of nitrogen. So like this, plants get the nitrogen in the compound form, which is known as a biological fixation of nitrogen. Second method is the atmospheric fixation of nitrogen. Now, what is actually happening in this process? Look, as you know that there is a lightning in the rainy season, right? This causes atmospheric nitrogen and oxygen to react with each other. And when atmospheric nitrogen and oxygen react with each other to form the nitric oxide, and that nitric oxide, which is again oxidized, म्हणजे त्या नायट्रिक ऑक्साईडचं पुन्हा ऑक्सिजन बरोबर केमिकल रिॲक्शन होते टू फॉर्म नायट्रोजन डायऑक्साईड आणि त्यापासून नायट्रोजन डायऑक्साईड तयार होतो. नाउ व्हॉट आफ्टर दॅट? द नायट्रोजन डायऑक्साईड dissolves in rainwater and then it is converted into nitric acid, and that nitric acid added to the soil along with the rainwater. Then this acid, which one? Nitric acid. This nitric acid react with different minerals in the soil. हे नायट्रिक ॲसिड मातीमध्ये असणाऱ्या वेगवेगळ्या मिनरल्स बरोबर रिॲक्शन करतं and convert into salt, and then plants use this nitrogen salt which is in the soil for their growth. अशा प्रकारे प्लांट्स सॉइल मध्ये असणारं नायट्रोजन सॉल्टचा वापर करतो. कशासाठी? फॉर देअर ग्रोथ. नाउ let's talk to the next topic. Let's concentrate on it. That is the symbiotic nutrition. Now, what do you mean by symbiotic nutrition? It is very simple, student. In some cases, two or more than two different types of plant live together to fulfill their needs of nutrition, protection, support, etc. with each other help. म्हणजे दोन प्लांट्स एकत्र वाढतात आणि एकमेकांना मदत करतात. दिस टाइप ऑफ न्यूट्रिशन इज कॉल्ड द सिम्बायोटिक न्यूट्रिशन. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, सम फंगाई ग्रो अराउंड द रूट ऑफ सम अदर प्लांट. नाउ दिस प्लांट supply nutrient. It means this plant supply the food to the fungi, right? And what the fungi gives in return? Fungi plant ला काय देतो? Fungi supply minerals and water to the plant. It means both the organism can survive. That the fungi gives the fungi which grows around the root of the plants, which supply the minerals and water to the plant, and plants supply the nutrient. Take a very good example of fungi and the algae. As you know that fungi provide water, minerals as well as shelter to the algae. म्हणजे फंगाय वॉटर, मिनरल आणि शेल्टर म्हणजे निवारा कुणाला देतं? ॲल्गाला देतं. ओके. इन रिटर्न ॲल्गे प्रोव्हाइड फूड टू द फंगाय, आणि त्या बदल्यात ॲल्गे फंगायला फूड म्हणजे अन्न प्रोव्हाइड करतं. बिकॉज यू नो दॅट द फंगाय इज पॅरेस्टिक. फंगाय इज नॉट एबल टू मेक हिज ओन फूड, राईट? अँड बिकॉज ऑफ दॅट then lichen is an example of symbiosis between algae and fungi. So when algae and fungi grows together, then it is known as a lichen, and lichen is a very good example of symbiotic nutrition. Now next topic is the heterotrophic plants. Heterotrophic plants means the plants that do not contain chlorophyll. For example, Loranthus and the Cascata. It means these are the plants which grow on the other plant body for obtaining food. म्हणजे हेट्रोट्रॉपिक प्लांट फूड मिळवण्यासाठी दुसऱ्या प्लांट्सवर वाढतात. And examples are Loranthus and the Cascata. Based on the heterotrophic plants, plants are divided into two important types. First one is the insectivorous plants and second one is the Sapropetic Plants. Okay. Now, there are some basic questions. Just look into this. First question, which part of Loranthus plant carries out the photosynthesis? Answer is leaves of Loranthus carries out photosynthesis. Second basic question, from where do they obtain mineral and water? Loranthus plant ला minerals आणि water कुठून मिळतं? Loranthus obtain the necessary minerals and water from the host plant. Now what do you mean by host plant? थोडक्यात ज्या प्लांट्सवर ते वाढतं त्या प्लांटला म्हटलेलं आहे होस्ट प्लांट. तर लोरॅन्थस ज्या प्लांटवर वाढतं त्या प्लांट्सकडून त्याला मिनरल्स आणि वॉटर मिळतं. ओके. नाउ थर्ड वन, why is Loranthus known as partially parasitic plant? Partially, it means not totally. Parasitic, परपोषी. लोरॅन्थसला अंशतः परपोषी म्हणतात. It is not totally parasitic. Why? Because as you know that Loranthus also carries out photosynthesis, right? It means Loranthus takes shelter on the host tree. It takes the water and mineral from the host. But listen, the important thing is that Loranthus has chlorophyll and it can perform the photosynthesis and can make their own food. Therefore, Loranthus is known as a partially parasitic plant. Based on the heterotrophic plant, there are two types. In that, first one is the insectivorous plants, ज्याला मराठीमध्ये कीटकभक्षी वनस्पती असं म्हटलं जातं. Now listen, these plants are generally in soil or water that is deficient in nitrogen compound. ज्या सॉइलमध्ये नायट्रोजनचं प्रमाण कमी आहे त्या ठिकाणी हे प्लांट्स आपल्याला पाहायला मिळतात. राईट. But you know that the plants require the nitrogen for their growth. So, because of that, these insectivorous plants like the Drosera burmani, this is the insectivorous plants which has a flower-like appearance, ज्याला जी फुलासारखं दिसतं. And because of that, insect attracted to these insectivorous plants. This insect sits on the petals of these insectivorous plants. And then that insect is trapped by this insectivorous plant. This insect is digested by these insects are digested by these insectivorous plants, and from that insect these plants get the nutrient. It means they get the nutrient or the food. Examples, Drosera and the pitcher plant. Now there is one basic question. Why does the pitcher plant feed on insect even though it produces food by photosynthesis? Pitcher plant, I already told you, pitcher plant is an insectivorous plant, right? But pitcher plant is able to make his own food by the process known as the photosynthesis. Then why does this pitcher plant eat the insect? Because pitcher plant grows in the soil that is deficient in nitrogen. ज्या सॉइल मध्ये नायट्रोजनचं प्रमाण कमी आहे या ठिकाणी pitcher plant वाढतं. And you know that the plants require nitrogen, right, for making food, for making proteins. And because of that, to get the proteins, this pitcher plant feed on insect, or you can say this pitcher plant eat insects. Next one is the sapropetic plants. Plants which obtain the food from dead and decaying bodies of other organisms are called sapropetic plants. And the very good example of this is the different types of the fungi, ज्याला आपण कवक किंवा बुरशी असं म्हणतो. Various types of fungi like mushrooms and the yeast, they are sapropets. Then why they are known as the sapropets? Because they obtain the food from the dead and decaying body or bodies of other organisms. म्हणजे मरण पावलेले जे प्राणी आहेत त्यांच्या शरीरापासून ते अन्न मिळवतात. That is why they are known as the saprophytes. Now, but how? Fungi secrete digestive enzymes on the dead remains. Fungi त्यांच्या बॉडीमधले जे एन्झाईम्स असतात ते सिक्रीट करतात, रिलीज करतात. कशावर? डेड बॉडीज ऑफ द प्लांट्स अँड ॲनिमल. देन they digest, those enzymes digest the carbon compound in those remains. त्या remains मध्ये जे कार्बन कंपाऊंड आहे त्याचं ते पचन करतात. and in this process solution is absorbed. In this process solution is absorbed to obtain the nutrient, or you can say to obtain the food. So in short we can say the plants which obtain the food from the dead bodies of plants and animals known as the sapropetic plants.